Hi, everyone. I want to talk a little bit today about a time in history we call the Great Migration. Um, your Michigan chapter focused on it a little bit, but I wanted to give a little bit more information, put this up a little bit so you see, okay, about the Great Migration. Now, in a couple of lessons that you read in chapter six, we're learning about how Michigan has become kind of a melting pot. All of these different cultures of people that have come to Michigan and made Michigan what it is, and how our population has grown and Michigan is becoming and changing to what it is today. Well, a time happened back in the 1920s and 1930s that we call, and started in about 1920, time we call the Great Migration. Remember what means, what migrate mean. Migrate means to move from one place to another. Right? So an immigrant is somebody who's come in from another country into our country. Okay, or from one country to another. That person is called an immigrant. Right? To migrate means to move. And we talk about birds that migrate in the winter. The geese fly south; they migrate to the south, and in the summer they migrate back. Well, people migrate as well. In the early 1920s and 30s, there was this great move to go from the south to the north in places like Georgia and Alabama, and moved up to the north. And north meaning not only Michigan, but into places like Chicago and New York. But Michigan was one of those places. So why did the people migrate, right? And the majority of people that we talk about during the Great Migration are the African Americans, right? So the screen that I have for you here on the Smithsonian website is just gonna, the picture that you see here is probably one of the most popular pictures from the time of the Great Migration. Millions of African Americans fled the South in search of a better life. That was their reason. Okay, we talk about pushes and pulls, right? This better life pulled them here to Michigan, and the life that they had there in the South was pretty difficult. They have come out of slavery. We're talking about a time when we have something called segregation, where the blacks are not treated, African Americans are not treated well. They're treated as very, very low class citizens, and they worked in the farming fields where they were, um, had to do very, very difficult work for little to no pay. Well, things are starting to change, and they're finding out about ways to get away, and they're finding about jobs that are now in the north. Because in the early 1900s, another thing that had started happening is automobile makers started making cars, Henry Ford being one of those. And of course, we know Henry Ford was right here in Michigan. So um, they started fleeing or leaving the South for this better life, right? And they would take whatever worldly belongings that they have, put them in crates, put them in anything they could. Sometimes they'd be able to get on a train and move north, or maybe even walk with their families long distances until they could possibly get a ride or somehow move to the north. Right. So, like I said, this picture you see here is probably one of the most popular pictures of a family leaving during the Great Migration. Here, there you go, caption on it. American family leaves Florida for the North during the Great Depression. Well, the Depression happened in the late 1920s and early 1930s. And that's where people lost a lot of money. There were no jobs. So there's another reason they wanted to get out, and they had wanted to move north. So as that happened and started coming here, Henry Ford is offering um, workers in the 1930s and 40s this great new wage, and that's $5 a day. Now, you guys think $5 a day, that's nothing. But at the time, that was a lot of money. So they hear about these jobs. So these jobs are pulling them to the north. And many, many thousands and thousands of African Americans moved to the north from the south for a better life. And that's what we call the Great Migration. And that's just kind of a snippet of what the whole thing was all about, right? So that caused a great new influx, or a great new amount of people to come here to Michigan. And that's where a lot of the African American population started to come from, was from the South and into Michigan, and into the cities, and into the areas of Detroit, and so they could work for jobs. So that part of our history is very important to the growth of Michigan. So remember the Great Migration. Okay? Hope you learned something today. If you want to learn more about it, you can search for under the Great Migration and you'll find even more information. Okay? If that helps. Have a great day.